Recording in progress.
Welcome into the Match Day 1 Champions League podcast. I'm your host, the real_G Warner, on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube. Today we're going to go through the draw has been done. It is the opening match day for a different Champions League setup. I'll go through the ins and outs, intricacies of what has changed, and then try to come up with some winners. We'll do an ultimate best bet end of show. So if you're not subscribed on Instagram or on YouTube at the real_G Warner, both those platforms. And of course, if you want the full version of this podcast, you can listen to it whenever you want, available on all your podcast streaming services. It's called Betting the Pitch on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify, and at the real_G Warner on YouTube as well. I'm going to go through each of the Champions League match day 1, which is different this year. It's not just Tuesday, Wednesday. It's now Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Also, I'm very disappointing. We don't have the group stage, I guess, set up because there's a huge long list, a Swiss system that they're using now, which apparently will, I guess, make this a little bit better, or they extended. So there's 2 more match days for Champions League, so they can earn more money, all these teams, but also you're not stuck with playing the same 3 group opponents twice each. So we'll see how that goes. As Alex Pereira on the La Liga coverage for ESPN said, they broke something that didn't need fixing. We'll see how this goes, and I doubt we're heading back any sort of direction because none of these clubs like to give up any sort of money. So I'll go through each of the match days here and come up with the best bet for each one of those, and then pick one of those 3 as my best bet for this episode. And that's where you can grade me forever and ever and ever. So we'll start with Juventus hosting PSV Eindhoven, a Dutch club, if you're just getting into the Champions League spirit, I guess. Maybe some good performance for me over the past few seasons. Maybe that will get you here. Thank you for coming in. Whether you're if you're not subscribed yet, please do so on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on whatever the other Spotify as well. Sorry, I don't mean to slight Spotify at all. But looking at the matchups for this one, so Juventus, they've got a new manager here, and we'll see what that looks like. It's kind of been a work in progress so far. I think it'd probably be the best way to describe it. But it has worked so far, you could say. Goalless draw with Roma, probably not that impressive. But Juve are a 3/4 goal favorite right now, with almost all the juice on Eindhoven on the road, actually. Over-under is 2.5, juice more to the over, almost all the way. So this number is a little bit smaller than I made it. We've seen some movement. I'll try to get an idea of kind of where things have moved, especially today, so that everyone is aware of kind of where money has been hitting. So not much movement on the total, but we've seen Juve climb from a 1/2 goal favorite to a 3/4 goal favorite. More juice on Eindhoven has come in, but I was expecting Eindhoven to be a much bigger underdog. Certainly, you could argue that their manager leaving. I think Arne Slot was there previously, but I probably should check that out. Arne Slot managerial. Let's see. Anyway, regardless, so the Dutch, in my takeaway from them, is the Dutch are really great at home. Very different. I guess Arne Slot was at Feyenoord, so probably no manager issues here. But anyway, so the Dutch, I usually look to being a great home team. I'm not sure necessarily that on the away from home, like the strategies and how they change in this competition this season, because ultimately it's not about head-to-head anymore. It's about getting as many points as possible. That possibly could suggest some strategy changes where there'll be a lot more aggression from road teams because they're looking for something. I guess envision a league campaign where there's a lot less value to having a draw away from home. I mean, you want 3 points, of course. So I would expect some sort of league season type of mindsets here, which could damage the underdogs a little bit, and certainly unders, as you might see some teams going for stuff because 0 points is not worth it when there's no tiebreaker from a head-to-head type situation. I guess it could be in the big league of trying to get the top 8 or top 16, but ultimately I'm not sure that's enough to change too many mindsets. But it could be, I think, instead of looking for a more conservative end to matches, you might see a little bit more aggression here. So that's probably something we need to take in consideration. From an Eindhoven perspective, I think going to Juve, one of the toughest slots to draw. But I do feel like Eindhoven would be very, if you gave them a draw right now, they would certainly take it. So that's something to think about when handicapping this matchup. Juve, they previous strategy under Massimiliano Allegri, they basically took a 1-0 lead and killed games. I don't think that Juve are in that type of structure at this point in the season, but they also haven't really been that offense, or they haven't been that great offensively. They've had a ton of movement, ton of new players coming in, and that's been a work in progress. I think this Juve version today on September 17th will be a lot different than the Juve in the future, but that's also coming from a standpoint where they're great defensively last season, or at least were to the under, and then also have a really great defensive manager coming in who I think will make Juve's defense even better. So I think biggest interest for me in this matchup, Eindhoven not yet a full goal underdog, so that's probably not enough for me there. But I am interested in the total under 2.5, just because Juve defensive manager, PSV Eindhoven, I think on the road will look for a low scoring result. So that's my lean on that early matchup. Only other early matchup on Tuesday, and we've good spreading throughout the week, which is probably better for bankrolls and things of that nature. But Young Boys on a Swiss artificial turf field, they're hosting Aston Villa from the English Premier League. Currently, Young Boys a 1-goal underdog with all the juice. Over under is 3, juice slightly more to over. In terms of where this has moved, Young Boys last night were only a 3/4 goal underdogs. We've seen some Aston Villa money come in today. Not a surprise with English Premier League money tending to dominate the market, and really any UK sides getting looked at a lot more closely. So maybe look to Celtic from Scotland later on this episode. But Young Boys, so it's a different game playing on an artificial turf. We've seen Pep Guardiola complain about it in the past, Manchester City manager, but Aston Villa is a little bit different scenario here. Unai Emery still, to me, a great defensive tactician, deserved a lot better with a matchup with Arsenal earlier this season. But I think I'm curious to see what it'll look like with Aston Villa away from home, because they've had big differences from their home performance versus away, which you'd expect, but maybe not as drastic as Aston Villa have seen. Young Boys, I don't think have much of a chance to win this matchup, but of course, they're in the competition. They've made it through the playoffs to get here. They're going to be very happy to be there, and ultimately trying to put in a good performance in front of their fans. I think a 1-goal loss is probably within the realm of possibilities, even for a Swiss league team against Swiss Super League against the English Premier League. But huge discrepancies in finances and talent. Young Boys are essentially trying their best to do some sort of upset today. So +1 is of interest, I think, but I like under 3 more than anything in that matchup. Now to the bigger slate. We got 4 matches all starting at 3 p.m. Eastern time, 2 p.m. here in Dallas, Texas, and then 9 o'clock, I believe, across Europe, but I guess England's 8 o'clock. So Real Madrid hosts VfB Stuttgart, Germans who have had an incredible climb from fighting relegation to scoring a ton of goals and finishing in second place in the German Bundesliga last season. Real Madrid a 1.5 goal favorite right now at home at the Bernabeu. More juice on the Real Madrid side, probably unsurprisingly there. Over under is 3.5, and it is juiced slightly more to over. So in terms of where this number has moved, and I feel like I might have skipped one, so I got to go back. Not forget that. But Stuttgart have actually caught some money today, which is a surprise to me. I would expect Real Madrid to be bet this whole time. I'm concerned about Stuttgart. They gave a ton of goals to Mainz before the international break. They've seen a lot of goals in their matches, and in general, I would expect and probably lean toward unders with Real Madrid, because I feel like they are very likely to keep clean sheets against their opponents, no matter who they're up against, because really you have to focus so much of your game plan on stopping Real Madrid, because if on a counterattack, they'll crush you. And ultimately, I think that does impact the Stuttgart game plan, as it should, on this Champions League opener. You could have the "we're happy to be here" type strategy, but I think Stuttgart, it's a proud, big club in Germany, just had fallen on hard times. They should be very, very interested in trying to keep this match close, but also trying to get some sort of result and maybe even steal a win. I don't know necessarily, because Stuttgart did have a lot of goals, and that's kind of how they did things last season, though Serhou Guirassy had left for Borussia Dortmund in the summer. Unkept secret, he was moving, but that's certainly something to consider here. I think Stuttgart are going to do their best, or case scenario for them is to keep this low scoring and try to pinch a victory. I think Real Madrid have shown that they've got a lot of the same pieces. That was a big concern with Kylian Mbappe coming in from PSG on a free transfer, earning as much money as he did, is that he plays the same position as Vinny Jr. And ultimately, they're going to have to do some sort of rotation with left wingers to strikers and playing all over the place and trying to stay, I think, hard to defend by moving around was probably the best case. But Kylian Mbappe is the best left winger in the world, and it's unfortunately, I mean, Vinny Jr. probably second best, but playing the same position, you can't both play over there on the wide position. So that has impacted things, and I do think makes Real Madrid a little bit overrated as a favorite. I'm not sure I want to play Stuttgart, though, as this is a big step up in competition for them, and we'll see what a German side who haven't looked as I mean, the German clubs in the Bundesliga, I feel like, have done well in the Champions League compared to expectations, but expectations have been very low, especially against the bigger sides from Spain and from England. I think biggest interest for me is under 3.5 in this matchup, though I am certainly concerned with the Stuttgart defense. First matchup I skipped over by accident was Sporting Lisboa or Sporting Lisbon, Sporting CP, Sporting Clube de Portugal. They are hosting Lille from France. Kind of a big spread here, I got to say. A little bit surprised and seen some movement, I think, today. So Lille last night before I went to sleep in the wee hours was a 3/4 goal underdog on the road at Sporting Lisboa. Now they are a full 1-goal underdog, which is sizable, I think. Total has also climbed from 2.5 to 2 3/4. So it seems like some Sporting Lisboa money has hit. And they are certainly a great club. The Portuguese league does very, very well in the Champions League. In my experience, they've knocked out some big giants like I think Porto knocked out Juventus in the knockouts a few years ago. In this case, again, it's kind of feeling yourselves out and seeing who will be what they will be, because Lille had replaced their manager. Paulo Fonseca had left for Milan, as I wear their kit today. And I think the big question is what is this Lille side? They've always been known to be a great, I think, like shepherd of talent, like building talents from young players and then selling them off for financial gain. And unfortunately, they've switched managers and kind of are in a rut potentially of trying to figure out who this team in 2024-25 will be. It's going to be a tough trip to Portugal. Ultimately, Sporting is one of the best clubs in that country and certainly have great talent. I think where Bruno Fernandes came from and also Cristiano Ronaldo. But the big question for me is what is this Sporting Lisboa side that much different than Lille to be a 1-goal favorite? That feels like a very, very big price. For that reason, I'm very interested in Lille, as I think they're very talented and have a lot of ability. 1 goal of insurance is large. Also lean to under 2 3/4 because I think there's a little bit in the market that still expects a Paulo Fonseca style Lille who are very all-out attacking. And even then, I feel like there's a little bit more to the unders for that side than I guess meets the eye. Moving next to Bayern München hosting Dinamo Zagreb, Croatian side, and Bayern a gigantic 2.5-goal favorite. Pretty big in this competition, but I guess not completely surprising in this stage of the competition. Not much moving on the side overnight. Total is 3 3/4, which is also gigantic. Total juiced more to under than to over. Bayern are, of course, under a new manager and Vincent Kompany, but their structure is in place. They've got the same players pretty much. And really it's going to be trying to decide or really figure out how to defend is going to be the limitation potentially for Bayern Munich this season. Harry Kane will get goals. Thomas Muller still playing. Jermaine Musiala has been so good. Dinamo Zagreb are going into the Lions' Den. They're going to try their best to defend as much as possible for this entire matchup. I'm not sure that they will have enough success. I also don't think Zagreb are very likely to score. So it does put the total potentially in jeopardy. But I think at this point, Bayern have shown they can score against anybody, no matter how good you are or what game plan you use. And ultimately, I think unders with Bayern. Well, if this one hits 4, I mean, that's a very key number to push there. But I swear, I don't know at 3 3/4, even with a big total bigger than I made it, if I'm interested in messing with that one, I got to say. Last but not least, on this Tuesday card, we have, before we get the ultimate best bet for this day, plus Wednesday, and then Thursday, Milan, a 0.5 goal underdog at home right now to Liverpool. Currently, all the juice on Milan over under is 3, juice very heavily to over, actually. very little movement overnight. Some money coming in on Milan potentially. All lines quoted courtesy of Bet Online, SportsBetting.ag. There are links in the podcast descriptions on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on YouTube. If you're looking for some free money for signing up, go do that. Follow the links, and I think we both get paid, so that'd be cool. Would appreciate whoever you are. We'll shout you out in the next episode if that occurs. Just hit me up on Twitter at @the_real_G Warner. Anyway, Milan, they haven't looked great to start the season. Paulo Fonseca in very offensive style. That certainly can work against the dregs of competitions, but against Liverpool, one of the best clubs in the world, who look about as sharp as they have in years, that's a big concern. Liverpool is a road favorite. Makes sense. The crowd travels really well. I went to a Champions League match of theirs in against Atletico Madrid a few years back, and they bring the noise and got off to a good start, and ultimately ended up, I think, 2-0 up, tied 2-2, an equalizer, and then ended up winning 3-2 to cover the spread. Not like that has a ton of influence in this matchup, but great road team. And Liverpool under Slot, I think they might even be better than against Jurgen Klopp. They're less of a concern with that counter press and really just going nuts at you for 90 minutes. But I think a measured Liverpool approach that controls the ball a lot more is a better one. And I think there's some value on unders with Liverpool moving forward. And I think that's the biggest question is, will there be I mean, is it worth it to potentially back unders with Liverpool, especially against a very attacking Milan side? For that reason, I think I'm interested in under 3. Push there is important as well. Probably could potentially see this hit 3.25 before kickoff. Milan at home also of interest, but I think at this point I'm more interested in that under 3. So we've just finished Tuesday. We'll get to Wednesday in 1 second. Before best bet, as I eventually push everything into the ultimate best bet realm later in the show to pick my favorite for this entire Champions League match day 1. But for my best bet on this episode, I'm going to go with that Young Boys under 3 goals. I feel like that's the ticket for me. Big questions about Aston Villa's road performances, and ultimately a big favorite away on an artificial turf. We'll see how that all works together. You always hear players complaining about dry surfaces, so I don't know what they're going to expect with artificial turf, and it will be certainly a new environment for the Villains as they go on the road. Moving to Wednesday, we'll start with Sparta Prague hosting Red Bull Salzburg. Certainly smaller names, and I guess that's why they have the earlier window. Sparta Prague, a quarter goal favorite right now at home to Salzburg. Over-under is 3, juice pretty heavily, or all the way to under as we speak. In terms of moving on this one, Sparta Prague have gotten some money bet on them today, moving from a pick'em to a slight favorite, quarter goals at home. Total has been, I guess the over's been bet a little bit from plus money to just even. Sparta Prague, they are, to me, I think the second best club in the Czech Republic, or in Czechia, as they've changed their branding. Sure, if anyone's listening from Prague that supports, that probably won't go very well with the AC Sparta crowd, but it happens, my bad. I think from a Salzburg perspective, they are all out attacking and play they're part of the Red Bull system. They are going to use that, try to kill you in the middle of the field, great on counterattacks, but ultimately will be pressing very, very high. That's a good question for me of how that will work. I think it's hard to see. Saw Salzburg at Inter last season in Champions League. They were very competitive, I thought, lost 2-1, but did a lot to equalize and ultimately, I think, succumbed to a penalty. I think the road team is my interest here because I just feel like their system is proven. They've done very well in Champions League in the past. Of course, things change, but ultimately, that's my biggest interest there. I think also I have some interest in under in that matchup, as I just don't necessarily think that Sparta Prague are a deserving favorite will score a ton of goals. Moving next to Bologna hosting Shakhtar Donetsk. Currently, Bologna, half a goal favorite at home with more juice. Over-unders 2.25, juice very heavily to over. Feels like a pretty cheap price for Shakhtar Donetsk, I got to say. Certainly used to playing road games in this competition, as they are never at home, as they are a Ukrainian side. And unfortunately, I don't think FIFA or UEFA is playing anything in that country for the foreseeable future. But Bologna, they lost their manager to Juventus, as I already talked about, lost a lot of their players, certainly have rebuilt in stages, but team's nowhere near as talented as it was. Though certainly you could argue that a lot of their talent was a result of their results last season. Shakhtar Donetsk, they're going to play a counterattacking style, usually fairly aggressive up the pitch. That does potentially leave them in danger. But I think Bologna's got this line is very telling, as it's about half of what I was expecting. I think the total is also tiny, 2.25, the smallest one we've talked about yet. I don't think there's a lot of goals expected from the home team, and therefore I'm very interested in under here. I think Shakhtar Donetsk, certainly they look like they're of value, but you need a road result to cover the spread here. I'm not sure I feel that good at this point, but I'm interested in potentially betting against Bologna moving forward. I think under 2.25 is my biggest interest in that matchup. Moving next to Club Bruges hosting Borussia Dortmund. Currently Bruges a half a goal underdog with all the juice over-unders 2.75, juiced more to the over than to the under. Not much movement so far, no movement at all from last night at Bet Online. But Dortmund, they almost won the Champions League. I thought outplayed Real Madrid for a lot of that Champions League final. They are in a little bit of transition, or a new manager, got all these new bodies coming in, and now go on the road, which is very tough for any club, but especially it's been hard for Dortmund over the last few seasons, though their defense has been very good despite being really, really leaky in the German Bundesliga. Bruges, their Belgian side that were really great a couple seasons ago in Champions League, and then I think played in the Conference League last year, but here we are, they're back. I feel like their talent is going to be dwarfed by Borussia Dortmund, but this is a great Belgian side. I think my biggest interest is surprise at under here, hoping that this will climb to 3 before kickoff, because Dortmund, I mean, coming off a goalless draw before the international break of Werder Bremen, there's just not a lot to me with that offense. We're very fortunate to beat Eintracht Frankfurt. Probably should have fell behind, ended up winning 2-0. Under hit against Werder Bremen. And I think this competition has been known for unders, or at least it was under haven for Borussia Dortmund bettors last season. So that's my biggest interest. I think Bruges have to prove it to me so far by laying under 2.75, get a good home result maybe, and then potentially cash that under as well. Moving next to the biggest one on the list, Manchester City hosting Inter Milan. Currently, Man City a 1-goal favorite with all the juice over-unders 2.75, juice all the way to over. A rematch of the Champions League final from a couple seasons ago, which I thought Inter outplayed. It seems like the underdog always outplays the favorite and rarely wins the Champions League final, unfortunately. I guess it does happen time to time. Chelsea with an upset win over Man City, that happens. I guess Real Madrid over Liverpool as well. But I think Inter are one of the best teams in the world. As I'm saying this in a Milan kit, unfortunately, Christian Pulisic does not play for Inter, but there we are. Man City, definitely one of the best in the world, probably top 2. Real Madrid might have edged ahead with their Mbappe signing. But I think Man City have shown they are a great offensive team that does have some defensive problems. And I don't think Inter Milan are going to be at all phased by going on the road to Man City. It's certainly hard to play at the Etihad, and Man City are a bear to face against. But I think Inter getting a full goal of insurance is a value. I think they're going to do a great job of keeping Manchester low scoring in this matchup. I think there's a good chance that we see under and Inter come through. Biggest question is how much does Inter score, or do Inter score, because that will certainly impact the total here and will certainly help decide. So lean to Inter getting a full goal, and also lean to under 2.75 in that matchup, though certainly very juiced to the over right now. We'll be waiting for a 3, as that's an important key push number available. Moving next to Celtic hosting Slovan Bratislava. Currently Celtic a 1.5 goal favorite. With a little bit more juice on their side. Over under is 3, juiced more to the under. Surprising to see Celtic getting this much respect, but I think that's probably a referendum on Slovan Bratislava, the Slovakian side. Celtic have never performed well in this competition. Their strategy under Ange Postecoglou, I don't know that it could get any more aggressive than what he was doing there. But this is a really big price. I don't think that Celtic are this much better than any club in this competition, even with the Slovan Bratislavas coming into town, into Glasgow, and on the road. It just feels like, to me, Slovan Bratislava, without having a ton of experience with them, they qualified for this competition. I think deserve to be here, and I think I'm ultimately looking at their their side and the under as well. Probably more interest in that under. Last but not least, on Wednesday, we have PSG and Girona. Currently, PSG a 1.5 goal favorite at home. All the juice on Girona on the road. Over under is 3.25. Juice very heavily to over. I think Girona got a little bit. I guess one set of juice has changed overnight, and the over's been bet. The under was getting more juice last night. Girona are going to be an aggressive attacking side. It has not worked for them in La Liga against the biggest clubs besides Barcelona. I think ultimately PSG are going to have a valuation change from losing Mbappe, but I do think they're just as potent offensively without him, I got to say. Girona are going to certainly go for it. I think this is one of those rare occasions where I actually lean over. That does not play very well for Girona getting a goal and a half, but I do think that they can score goals in this matchup. I think we see potentially a lot of goals. And so I think my biggest interest there, PSG Girona, is over 3.25 goals. Though certainly looks like if you're betting that, you probably want to grab that now, as ultimately I feel like that's might even close 3.5. Like, it's not a huge change because you still need 4 goals to win. But pushing on half your bet at 3, if it lands 2-1 or 3-0 or something like that, that's an important thing to do in this soccer betting, as we are looking to go literally through the end of May, and potentially into June, trying to keep our bankrolls as healthy as possible. For my best bet on Wednesday, the 18th of September, I'm going to go with Inter, 1-goal underdog on the road at Manchester City. Scary place to go, but really love that push on 1. And now we go to Thursday, a weird Champions League day, but cover that rest of that card, get that out to the masses, and then hopefully win some money moving forward. So start with the early matchup, Crvena, who is Red Star Belgrade. They are hosting Benfica from Portugal. Over-under here is 2.75, just a little bit more under side. Red Star Belgrade, a half a goal under dog at home. No faith really for me in Crvena in their winning this matchup, though certainly Benfica were disastrous in Champions League last season. We're supposed to finish second in their group, we're 4th at last place heading into the last day, needed a big win in order to somehow get 3rd place and qualify for the Europa League. They did that. They had some success there. It was undeserved, I felt, and went out eventually without winning the competition. Now they got a good place to land. If you're going to play a road match, going to Belgrade will be difficult in the Serbian capital, but ultimately will be a lot easier than a lot of these other clubs that they'd run into. So I think Red Star Belgrade might be competitive in this one, especially at home. My biggest interest will be to under 2.75 in this matchup, but I just don't really know that I have much faith in Crvena at this point. I'll lean to under 2.75 rather than to the side there. Feyenoord then hosts Bayer Leverkusen. Currently Feyenoord, a 3/4 goal underdog with more juice. Over-under is 3, juice very heavily to over. Leverkusen, of course, an incredible, almost undefeated season last year until the Europa League final, which they lost to Atalanta thanks to some wonder goals from Ademola Lookman, former Leipzig player. In terms of the movement on this matchup, there hasn't been much. A little bit of money maybe coming in on Leverkusen overnight. But Feyenoord, one of those Dutch sides that have a great home field advantage. And I think we've seen Leverkusen been really fortunate with a lot of their victories, I got to say, over the seasons. Certainly can score goals, and Xabi Alonso is awesome, but a lot of that incredible run last season just seemed to be the momentum of the run because they were not playing that well for most of that year. I think from a betting perspective, since this is Betting the Pitch podcast, thank you for listening. I think Feyenoord is my biggest interest in this one. I have some interest in under 3 because that kind of correlates, but I think the side is actually my bigger interest rather than the total. Moving next to Monaco hosting Barcelona. Currently Monaco, a 3/4 goal underdog with more juice at home. Over under is 3, juice all the way to over. This is a big test for the Monegasque crowd. I just was there a couple of weeks ago and did not go to the Stade Louis II, unfortunately, but as it was an international break. But this is a big question on what the Monaco crowd has never been dominant, I don't think, and Barcelona has more fans in more places. So I might even see less of an impact of the Monaco crowd than against anyone, which is a concern, especially when this is one of those important matches you need to get a home result. I do lean to the home underdog. Barcelona's offense has been incredible this season, though, and total actually feels a little light to me, only at 3 compared to the 3.75 we've been seeing, or 3.5. I don't know necessarily because Monaco, their offense, I think, is downgraded as is the team, really. I don't think Adi Hutter is really the perfect fit for Monaco. He's more a defensive mind and a counterattacker from the previously in the Bundesliga in Germany. But this is going to be an interesting matchup, of course. We'll have a lot of eyeballs on this matchup, but I'm not sure that I feel good enough about Monaco. I probably lean over in this one, if anything, which is a surprise, I'm sure, for anyone to hear. But Joe Dollar, I'm sure you love me mentioning that. One of my longtime Patreon subscribers, patreon.com/real_Warner. If you're not there yet, to get all my plays across all sports. But rare for me to preach an over there, but I just did, and 2 out of my last 4 matchups to discuss after a Girona over as well, Joe. So hope you're listening and hope you are enjoying potentially a leopard changing his spots. Leopard, not leper. Moving next to Atletico Madrid hosting Red Bull Leipzig. Currently, Atleti a half a goal favorite at home. Total is 2 3/4. Juice more to the over. Leipzig have been, got a big win on the road at Leverkusen before the international break. Atleti have been slow scoring, to say the least, especially with all the money they've spent. A lot of juice on Atleti. This is probably heading towards 3/4 of a goal. Total at 2 3/4 feels a little bit high for these teams, but certainly a lot of goal scoring ability here in this one. I feel like this line is kind of priced to perfection here. As it climbs, I think I get more interested in Leipzig, but certainly they have, I thought, looked really great in Champions League over the years, just kept running into Manchester City, unfortunately. Still, I think, outplaying them, but not getting the results that they required. Atleti, there's a lot to say about Simeone's side that's, again, looked at as a potential La Liga winner. I think that's going to give us some value to fade them this season. I'm not really sure necessarily where to go with this. And Atleti are much better at home, but it's really because they're just so bad away from home. I think Leipzig have had that same problem in the past. I don't know necessarily where my interest is on this one necessarily, but as always, it's probably Leipzig getting that half of a goal, which will turn to 3/4, I think, before this match kicks off, and then to under 2 3/4 as well, as I think this is going to be a cagey matchup, as you would expect with the Diego Simeone side. Moving next to Stade Brestois hosting Sturm Graz. Currently Brest a half a goal favorite with more juice. Over under is 2.5 with more juice. This is going to be an incredible, I think. I'm very curious about Brest after a really bad start to Ligue 1 in France, if they are a potentially relegation candidate that's in Champions League this year, out of one of the bottom of the top 5 European soccer leagues that I cover on the Betting Pitch podcast every Friday, hopefully during the day, but sometimes Friday nights, getting you ready for the Saturday and Sunday and Monday cards. Sturm Graz coming from Austria. It's amazing they're in Champions League considering how poor they were just a few seasons ago in Europe, but they're here. This is probably one of the lower value matchups that are out there. I'm interested in Sturm Graz potentially going on the road to defend. This is probably their best chance to get a road victory, I think, by far. I don't know necessarily that I like the half of a goal enough, because that requires a result away. But Brest, I'm not impressed with. They've lost a ton of players, and I feel like last season was a really fortunate run. Didn't have any sort of European commitments, and I feel like if not today, Stade Brestois, a team I'd like to be against for a lot of this campaign. Last but not least, Atalanta hosts Arsenal. Currently, Atalanta a half a goal underdog at home. Juice about split a little bit more the Atalanta side. And the total on this matchup is 2 3/4, just pretty heavily to under as we speak. Atalanta getting a little bit of money overnight, but would expect that to change as, of course, every English Premier League club will be bet nonstop, it feels like, throughout this competition. But Arsenal, took a tough red card with Declan Rice before the break and surrendered a lead against Brighton. Took one, I think, with a man down, but big questions for them is how they balance all these competitions, Premier League and Champions League. It went fairly well last year, coming down to the last game of the season, though I think Champions League did not go as expected, getting eliminated by, I want to say, Porto. But I think Atalanta, they are in contract disputes with a lot of players right now that have moved on a lot of their talent. So they're certainly going to grow under Gasperini and probably be a lot better end of season, but this is a great time to get them for Arsenal go on the road. With that said, I'm still very interested in Atalanta at home. I don't know that, I guess I leaned under 2 3/4, though that's a lot based on the Arsenal success defensively. Most of the clubs they play are so scared of them that they won't really attack them. Atalanta is so aggressive, certainly with leads, and sometimes they're a little bit more pragmatic than you'd expect a Gasperini club to be. But I think that does threaten the under here. So I'm actually probably going to take that off my list. Under the 2.75, probably not that interested. More interested in Atalanta getting half of a goal at home, just because I think they're going to try to push Arsenal, and they need the 3 points at home just as bad as Arsenal do away from home to try to finish in that top 8. I think Atalanta see their home matches as the best opportunity for them to advance in this competition. So for that reason, I'll go with Atalanta, half a goal underdog at home as my best bet or in that matchup. So now it's almost time for the ultimate best bet. I still got to give you a Thursday pick and then go through. I'll put this on all the social media channels. So if you're not following at the Real_G Warner, please do so on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, it's Betting the Pitch, but on YouTube and on Instagram at the Real_G Warner. For my best bet on Thursday, I think I'm going to go with that Sturm Graz under 2.5 goals. I know it's not very sexy. I'm sorry for that, but it is what it is. We're trying to win. It's not about sex appeal, whatever, on the Betting the Pitch podcast, as you can tell. Look at this face if you're watching on video. But that'll get us to, I guess, the portion of the show where it's time for the ultimate best bet. So let me queue up my very, very fancy system to make this happen. Hopefully my phone, 18%, we should be good to famous last words, but it's time for the ultimate best bet. And as soon as I get my camera in a position that actually works, we'll get in and we will do it. Thank you all, of course, for listening. And if you could subscribe on YouTube at the Real_G Warner, hit the 5-star review button on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. If you leave a comment, I will certainly mention it. And I've been meaning to shout out my recent subscribers. So let's see if I can do that right now before we get to the ultimate best bet. I know I'm stalling, my bad, but there was something I had planned to do and wanted to make sure I got to it before we get off this episode. So thank you to the recent, come on, subscribers. Where are we at? We're up to 146 subscribers, so that's nice. We'll try to get more than that. And we have people live. If you got any questions or want me to cover something, people live in the chat, please go through. I think I can make that happen. Let's see. See, we can show live viewer comments. Show up if you want to make a comment. Go ahead, everyone that's in here. Thank you all for watching live, especially unplanned, though my plan is to try to do this more going forward, the same type of fashion. Anyway, okay. Subscribers not really working at this episode, but we'll make that happen in the future. With that said, it's time for the ultimate best bets. So let's get into it. Hey, this is the Real_G Warner on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube. This is the ultimate best bet portion of the Champions League Match Day 1 episode. Went through every match on Match Day 1's Champions League card. Went through sides and totals, movement from last night into today's September 17th, as before it all kicks off. We'll give you a best bet winner for each of the days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Pick my favorite one so you can grade this podcast. If you're not a member of the community, please subscribe to Betting the Pitch on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. Leave a 5-star review. It's huge for the search rankings. We have NFL podcast coming out tonight, college football, of course, with pregame, Major League Baseball pregame, and trying to keep and resurge the Major League Baseball podcast on this platform. For Tuesday, I like Young Boys under 3 goals. For Wednesday, I like Inter Milan +1. And on Thursday, I like Sturm Graz under 2.5 goals. But for the ultimate best bet on this first episode, I'm going Inter Milan, a 1-goal underdog at Manchester City. I think they play it really tight, and that +1 is huge for a push possibility late in that matchup. That'll do it for this episode. Thank you all for tuning in. Hope you have a great start to your week, and make sure you hit that follow button, leave a 5-star review so we can get into a deeper, community and get more people on here watching. Thanks so much, and I'll talk to you down the road.
Recording stopped.